You're listening to Big Blend Radio with Nancy and Lisa, the mother-daughter team and publishers of BigBlendMagazines.com. And I'm already giggling because Ed Keenan is joining us next. He's a real special guy, and we've known him for a number of years. I think since, when the Blend magazine went from covering North San Diego into being Southwest Blend is when we first met Ed.
It's been a while.
And it was all about his book, Cow Chip Poetry, Lies, Lingo, and Lore. We were talking about the 8 keys of excellence, so there you go. Speak with good purpose and throw a cow chip. But, Ed is, he's a nature lover, a birding enthusiast. He's a cowboy poet, and we're very excited. He's got a great new book out. And, when you think about the holidays coming up, I think the gift of nature, the gift of verse and words that inspire and get you away from that computer really is a good gift. And I'm going to say BardSongs Seasons. Check it out. It's on Amazon.com. It's on Barnes & Noble, all those great online stores. But you can also go to Ed's website directly, edkeenan.com. And he's one of our experts in NatureConnectionMagazine.com. So, Ed, how are you doing?
Excellent, Lisa. Thank you very much. You make me sound better than I am. And
Nancy and I are nervous about you being on the radio show. We both think you're going to give us uphill now, right?
No, I've never been on a radio show, but with you two, it's sort of like I'm on a webcam here, so I'm looking at you eye to eye.
Yeah, there it is. How's it going in beautiful San Diego?
Excellent. I heard you talking about how many people go out and look at nature, pay to observe the birds, go out in a nature walk, go to the parks. North County Times here in San Diego this past weekend had an extensive article on people going out in nature. You know how many they say paid money last year to go?
How many?
70 million people in the United States of America went out to observe nature, went fishing, did something in nature. And so I thought that was a huge number. So you were talking millions. That's 70 million.
Wow! And so they need to all buy your book, BardSongs Seasons. I think that's a good idea.
That would keep you busy.
Yeah.
Yes, it would.
Nature is. I want to go back a little bit because I know you've also written a wonderful book that's your family history, and if you could give everybody a little inside glimpse to your life because you've got a fascinating life, and it kind of touches on, the way I was raised and Nancy's experiences in Africa. We've both lived in tents in the middle of, the nature and the woods. But, you talk a little bit about you in nature because I know you've got the cowboy side of you, but you've always lived with nature. In fact, you talk a little bit about Campo, too, in San Diego County where you grew up.
Well, I'll go back to the book that you're talking about there, Times Like These, An Endless Journey I wrote. It was an autobiography having to do with my life from as far back as I could remember up to high school. It didn't get into high school. And the reason for that was we left a ghetto-type area in Los Angeles, and my dad, when World War II started, thought that they were going to be bombed, I guess, and he wanted to move his family out of town. And we moved to eastern San Diego County. And so I began with reviewing what I could remember and then taking this trip. And from a boyhood perspective, it was an adventure. And we ended up in Lyons Valley, if you ever could find it on the map. It was just a remote place, way, way, way out in the backcountry, 35 miles east of San Diego, in the mountainous area there. There's a little valley called Lyons Valley, right at the foot of Lyons Peak. And by the time we got there, as I think you'll remember in the book, my mom, she's holding a babe in arms, my youngest sister, and there was 5 of us kids total. 2 were in the front seat and 3 were in the back of this stake bed truck. And she was bawling like a baby when we got there because she had never left her San Gabriel upbringing in East Los Angeles. And she lived on the same block her whole life. And here she was in a foreign land, so to speak, as a pioneer. And there was no water, no electricity, no facilities, and we moved into this little cabin. And it was the beginning of a real trip, so to speak, a journey that started there. It was in an oak grove. And my brother and I, in particular, we're close. We're a year and a half apart. You know, we're exploring from then on the rest of our life. And so it became recreation and a way of life and a lot of hard work, cutting wood, digging a spring for water, digging a hole for a potty chair, the whole business. And so it was there that I began my connection with nature, actually. And starting off as a child, we received gifts like a Red Ryder BB gun. What were you supposed to do with that? Well,
shoot your brother. No,
nice. As children, we were shooting at birds, and that. So a conversion took place over time. We don't shoot birds. So anyway, I got to know a lot of the birds and learned a lot about nature. And before there ever was a bird book that we knew about, that Roger Torrey Peterson at the time was the expert on that. But his books were all of eastern birds, and he was just barely turning his attention to the west. So we began naming the birds on our own. And so we have names of birds people have never heard of, including, because of the culture of the time, it was World War II, we even have a bird named a Nazi. And the reason for that, it was a skulky little bird with a yellow eye, excuse me, and you could find it hard to see in the bushes, and he was sneaky. And so all of these things came into play.
You know, I would have loved playing, hide and seek with you guys, for sure. It's interesting because, I think, a lot of us don't have that experience growing up, and I think sometimes as a kid, you're in that, and you either hate it or you like it, depending on your background and who you are, the person. But, Nancy and I lived in a place called Cramond, and this was in South Africa, and, it was, we were done, at this point with, we lived in a old farmer's house, and and if you had the crack in the wall, which you did, that's how you saw the outside. You saw the stars at night.
Let's just say this: in front of the fireplace, which you couldn't use for whatever reason, there was a pond.
When it rained.
And when it rained, we had tadpoles
in
the house.
And
really?
It was one of those things where, before school, when I came home from school, I'd be up to 3, 4 in the morning, walk down this long dirt road with other farm kids, and we'd get on a bus, and it would take us until 7 in the morning to get to school in Pietermaritzburg. Go to school in this uniform that, how are you going to iron? You didn't have electricity. It was a whole other deal, Then you get back home, you walk down that dirt road for however miles it was, through the sugar cane, get home, and you turn around immediately, get your buckets, and go to the reservoir
and get
water and try and walk home with the water. By the time you get home, you only have half a bucket of water if you're lucky, and guess what? You have to go back again.
Well, and then I just want to point out, when the reservoir was low, see, you understood water really well, because when the reservoir was low, it's not like here where you turn on the tap and people say there's a water problem, but the water's coming out of the tap or faucet, so you don't really get it that there's a water problem, because it's still coming, right?
Yep.
I had to dangle Lisa over the side of the reservoir, hold her up while she scooped the pail.
Yeah.
That is when you understand, wow, water is important.
And I still have really good muscles in my arms, Ed.
Well, she was a lot lighter then.
But yeah, there was a big difference in weight and size.
But when you live within nature, like what you're talking about, what we you really get it.
Yeah.
We actually did live within nature, and I understand your experience thoroughly, because that's the way we grew up to a point. And then later in life, I was probably around 10. My folks moved, still out in the backcountry there, but as the crow flies, about 10 miles farther east. And we eventually bought a piece of property, Dad did, and there was nothing on it, just brush. So we got an army tent, and we lived in an army tent for a while, but my brother and I, since there were so many kids, we lived outside. And we had a kind of a sled-type deck that we drug out in the brush there with a tractor and put a mattress on it. And we stayed there. That's where we slept, out in the open like that, out in the stars, until it got so cold in the wintertime there was ice on the bedding that we'd have a tarp on it. And when the ice got on there, that was time to get in. And so the only place we could go was to a little pump house that we had built out of block. And so we stayed in there over the winter. So we were like coyotes. We were in a den. And so from that background, you can understand that I developed a lot of interest in natural things and a lot of insight, so to speak. And so my writing in this BardSongs Seasons is a collection of things that I've written, and I have that much more and more to put together, that engages people in the thought of not just nature, of sweet-sounding words, and the sun was glowing and it looked like a lollipop. It's none of that kind of stuff. It's narrative type of verse that walks you through an experience, and it tries to get the reader to connect with something maybe they've never seen before, never realized, come to an appreciation to where they have this awe-inspiring moment that says, wow, that is really something. I'll give you an example. I've written something. It's not in this book, but the idea is there, and I'm seeming to be more and more inclined this direction. I entered the woods. I'm just making a narrative here about how the poem goes. I entered the woods, and I went through this screen or scrim, a curtain, and I broke the aura. And I stepped through a light shaft, and my shadow broke the light. And I walked into a spider web, and I saw it, and I was walking as carefully and lightly as I could, and I stretched it, and it broke. And a spider ran down a spider hole toward the bottom of the tree. And here came a nuthatch that went diving down toward the bottom of the tree. And as I continued in this whole walk in nature, I could see the connection between this and this and this and this, and all the woods were connected until I came to realize the entire universe is connected. And so I said to myself, you know what? My presence is like dropping a pebble in a pond, and it creates ripples. And the ripples of my presence are already known in the woods by all these creatures before I ever see them. But I'm connected, and I'm part of the whole. And the more still I can become, and the more silent internally, and the more relaxed I become, till that aura no longer penetrates the wood, I can see a lot more, feel a lot more, sense a lot more, and see a lot more animals and recognize a lot of things. I was in the woods one time, to give you an example, and I was walking down this little trail, and I saw this Buick's wren drop down off of a limb, fluttered over the grass, went back up on the limb, spun around about 3 or 4 times, flipping its tail. It's got white spots on its tail, so it's very obvious. Went back down over this grassy area and fluttering and twittering in a very, very soft twitter, back up on the limb, and a tiny bunny rabbit, a cottontail rabbit, ran. And I said, there's something there. That I just had read what was going on between that wren that informed the rabbit. The rabbit perked its ears up, figured out there's something wrong, and when I walked over there, there was a big rattlesnake slithering off of the rabbit trail. And I said to myself, how thankful I am for that little wren and for that rabbit, because I was informed by being alert to what was around me. So that kind of experience.
see, when you spend time in nature, you start to pick things up like that. We noticed that squirrels are, especially in Africa and stuff, that they sound alarms way quicker.
Absolutely.
And so, it's like when squirrels are running and peeking their little heads up and they bark at each other, something's going on. But it takes you a few times out in nature to actually read that.
So becoming connected with nature, as you were talking about to your friend there, and getting these moments of connection and relaxation is very, very healing to us. And then once you begin to connect, you begin to observe more, recognize more, and you read the language of the woods, so to speak. And that's what the ancients did. The scouts, the Indian scouts, the Bushmen of Africa, they were very adept at knowing what was going on just by the actions, the sounds, the birds. They had a tremendous perception of what was going on around them that we don't necessarily have today, because of our connection with technology, and we're not in the woods that much, and we don't think that way. We just go tromping through. As one writer said, we're a bird plow. He means by that by that like a snow plow. Everything flies off to both sides and up and around is like plowing snow. Everything is getting out of your way because we just are slashing and crashing through the woods and not thinking about anything around us. And so we don't see what's there.
Ed, that is so true. That's we were saying at the very top of the show, Nancy and I we hike so much,
Yes.
You'd think we wouldn't have, the booties that we do. But no. But no, the reality is we hike and there's this calming down, and you know how hard it is for Nancy and I to keep quiet. You've known us for how many years?
I know how hard it is for you to calm down.
Well, yeah, but if it's nature, it does take that time. And the more we're out there going to the parks as we're traveling and hiking, the quicker it becomes a calm down habit. You have your excitement, because I get excited, And then you have this internal calm excitement, and I want to go back to your experience with the Buick's Wren, and nature has so many signs, and the more you're out in nature, the more you start to realize how much even in industry and technology, how we duplicate nature. We try to, let's put it that way. We try to copy nature, and Nancy and I, we lost our we had our two baby cats, Morris and Athena.
Yeah.
And Athena was the goddess of all, and Mars passed, and then almost to the day, a year later, Athena passed, and we were in tears, and our good friend Rhonda out here, she just lost her cat, and we're all blubbery, and she's like, well, if, we were supposed to hike that day, and I'm like, she goes, well, I can understand if you want to stay home, and both Nancy and I are like, no way, we want to go, and we went out to Saguaro National Park. And, any listener who's heard this story from us, I apologize, but this is really bringing that point home of dropping the technology. We were very upset. The three of us went to this little picnic area that we love out there, and we sat down, and, there's this viewpoint that you can go in and have a picnic, and you see this whole valley of saguaros, and there's nesting flickers there, thrashers. I mean, they've been there for years. And anyways, we were waiting for these people to leave, and we sat in this other picnic area. The three of us got surrounded by butterflies, Ed.
Yes,
and surrounded. And we're like, wow, this is interesting. And they were the same color as Athena, same coloring. And Nancy's like, wow, and then I'm all blubbery again, but yet it brought this beauty and calming to me that I knew that there was this, there's a lot of folklore attached to butterflies and renewal and transformation.
The butterflies were landing on us and crawling all over us, mostly just to be scientific about it, because of the moisture, because we were crying, and butterflies are always attracted to moisture.
Were they in migration? Was it that time of the year?
No, not really. They just kind of, here they were, and then the people left from the place we wanted to go to, so we hiked up to the top of it, sat down, and then we were all talking. This is so funny because Rondi lived in Africa too, and she was actually married to a park warden out there, and we all, she was when she was talking about her stories are like I'm about to give birth, and she had to get out of the four-wheel drive and change the tires to go across a river full of crocodiles to get to the hospital way away. This is her. So we were all talking about Africa, and, we were all upset, but going, nature has these lessons, and are we really that scared and everything? Well, I went to go back down to the car real quick to get some more water, and I start to go down the rock place, the rock, there's this walk you have to do through the rocks, and I picked up my cell phone out of my pocket because a friend of mine was, trying to contact me because she knew I was upset. And I looked and I thought, look, she knows you're going to be fine. You're in a park. What are you doing with your phone? Turn it off. And, it's rattlesnake season's coming up. It's spring in March. You're going to get it up here. So I put the phone off, and as soon as I had that thought, I looked down, and there was a rattlesnake at my feet.
Really?
Yeah, and it was. There it is. There's your sign.
But it was quite a rare one, only found in this area.
Yeah. And it was a pit viper. Yeah.
Rock rattlesnake.
Yeah. So it was one of those where you've got to pay attention to the signs, and you start to listen internally when you go out into nature, and it takes you out of that comfort zone of technology, because I think the technology can become a fake comfort zone for us.
Well, that's the idea behind the writing that I've done, is to engage the reader in a nature walk. As you notice, the book is laid out in trails, not chapters. And each trail has 8 poems in it, or verses. And if the reader is observant, they'll notice that it's a thematic layout. And I call it nature's octaves, because 8 is an octave. And so you don't read the book cover to cover. You read it one trail at a time and determine, well, I think I'll get away from my desk, or I'll go to bed tonight, I'll read a trail and walk a trail. And hopefully what it does is engage the reader in an experience, and maybe some inspiring thought or some appreciation that they've never noted before. And it's everything from rocks to leaves to water to streams to birds, a lot about birds and animals. I write about a rock sometimes, just a single rock. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about a group of rocks that were sitting. They were statesmen. And
like
what they could tell us, how they got there. They're actually in the Sierras. If they could tell us how they got there, they had to float in by water or ice, and here they are positioned. And so the observation of them, if you can capture the vision, is like, wow, there is something here that maybe I'm not seeing. How did they get here? What's their history? Maybe they could tell us something. And that's kind of the reasoning that goes on throughout all this kind of poetry or lines of verse that I put together.
I think it's a book that one can take when they go hiking or camping and out in nature.
Exactly. It's not one you sit down and read from cover to cover, because it's repetitious in some ways, but then so is nature.
Yes, right. And I think what it does is it kind of calms you down, and it has that warmth of nature where it gives you that, okay, wait a minute, let's take time out. And I think it's, that's why I like it as a gift, because I think we all got to have that reminder, and you bring that reminder, and it's a gentle way. It's not nagging, No. I like to nag. I'm good at it. I'm a Virgo. But at the same time, just as that, hey, it's that constant reminder.
I think it was Nancy that says a gift that keeps on giving, because you keep going back to it.
I think it's, it's one of those books, like, I know you know your birds, because when you write about a bird that I know, I can immediately identify with it. The behavior of a bird, especially the thrashers, which is probably on the top of my list of favorite birds.
I love thrashers.
Because I love them because they sing, and you don't think that they don't look like a songbird, and they're just all plain brown with a bright eye, And
they're much like a mockingbird. They actually do talk. Mm-hmm.
But they really do sing, and the first time I saw one sing, I was like, oh my God, look what this little brown bird can do. Yeah, because he's always around the bottom. He's like a bottom feeder.
Yes, he is.
And so you think he's just plain brown. But they have that bright red eye, and when they sing, boy, do they sing. And we have them all over out here, and I just, it's like, it's not always about the brilliant plumage like a peacock. not always about that. And they're pretty funny birds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you start learning their relationship to their surroundings, and you can learn a lot about your surroundings by learning their behavior and listening to them sing and get up on a high limb, and then they're back down and they're thrashing in the bushes, and they're connecting with other parts of the creation around them. So next thing you know, you're noticing how that operates, and that's very inspiring, very satisfying to those who are connecting with nature. Not everybody does. We're not all inclined, but those that do, it's quite an experience.
Well, Ed, I'm really excited that BardSongs and Seasons is out. It's good to see your books out again. And
well, you nagged me enough, Lisa.
I learned it from me mother. And when she said about the gift that keeps on giving, she said that when I was born, too.
I don't recall that.
Ed, before you go, I have a quick question about birds. Here in Arizona, we have the little rock pigeons, the little desert, the desert doves, the little ones.
Yes.
And we see them, thrash each other, literally, with their wings.
They battle with their wings.
We didn't see this in California, even in the Joshua Tree area when we lived out there. We never saw them just whack each other with their wings. Is this a territorial or a mating issue or anything?
Have you seen that?
Have you seen that?
Yes, I have, and all pigeons do it, some a little bit more than others. It is a territorial thing, meaning that you're into my feeding area or territory, and that's their way of causing the other one to back off.
Okay.
Yeah, we call them the wing wars.
Yeah.
Because it's especially the hotter it gets out here, the more wing wars you get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I noticed the way they battle, they're quite smart.
Are you feeding them in a particular area? You have some food on the ground?
I'm never going to tell.
Yes, she is. She can't. Ed, we've got bats every night here. We have bats and feeders. So Nancy is the queen of sugar water. She feeds the bats and the hummingbirds every day because the bats are here all night long. They empty the hummingbirds. We have a couple of them, and they empty them out. And
the feeders,
do they?
And,
they found it, huh?
Yeah, it is so amazing to sit out there because they fly right. You can feel the breeze from their wings.
It's cool.
Yeah.
That's how close they come, and they hit the feeders. They don't hang on it and feed. But if you're really watching, you can see that they really get a good slurp every time, and they do it all night long. And sometimes we have 2 up to 20, and it's really kind of cool. But I'm not saying where we live because you're not supposed to do anything.
Yeah.
Here. So, but it is quite amazing.
Naughty, but yeah,
it's quite amazing.
It is to me better to be out in the wild and have the hummingbird come by you and have the nectar from the plants and really when you just experience out in nature. But our spaces are going away too.
Well, not all bats are nectar feeders. What you're looking at there, I've forgotten the name of it, but they do feed off of the cactus blooms.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And other plants that produce a nectar or syrup of some sort, they find it. The cactus the agave that produces, the tequila. Some of that agave produces a lot of syrupy type of nectar at the top of it, and they feed off of that. So they found your hummingbird feeders, and they love that sugar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's cool. It's really neat to watch and to be right with them. And, most people get fearful of them, but they're neat. They don't, I don't care. I'm not scared of them. I think you should have a fear for nature, have a healthy respect is probably it about when you're out there. Be aware, and that's the thing that nature teaches you is awareness, but also how to be calm. So I think it's really that balance we do. I think Bobby DePorter's right. It's that balance that we need in our life is going back to nature. And what I like about your book, BardSongs and Seasons, Ed, really, again, it reminds people to go out there. And the more people that go to our nature areas, the more we'll be able to have them protected and keep them for our future generations. So
it's not all about your parks. It's about, nature walks anywhere. And I know that you're involved in the national parks. But there are a lot of other locations where you can enjoy nature as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
it's important. And actually in your own backyard, you can, like we do.
Cities have areas, too.
It's just something to be aware of, so that when we, destroy things, we think we're just destroying, this grove of trees. We're destroying a lot more.
Right.
We are indeed.
Yeah, we are destroying so much. We need to be, we need to recognize that.
Well, Ed, we've got to run, but thank you so much for joining us. It's been so much fun, and it's been good to hear your voice again and read your words. And you know what? We're going to take your book out on a hike. So BardSongs Seasons going hiking to Saguaro, but we're also going to be going to Buenos Aires National, the wildlife refuge out there in southern Arizona. You know that area for birding.
Yes.
So I'm going to send you some photos of some red-winged blackbirds. How about that? And I know that, and some vermilions out there.
Well, there's those gray hawks, northern gray hawks
from Mexico.
There's a breeding pair that's been there for years.
Yeah.
Are you talking over near Patagonia?
Yes. Yeah. So between that Aravaca area.
Oh yeah, the Aravaca. I know where you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they have the gray hawk over there?
Yes, the Mexican gray hawk. I've seen them in Patagonia too, in Sonoita Creek Preserve. But Ed, again, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. BardSongs and series, BardSongs and Seasons. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all those great online stores. But it's always good to go to the author's website. It's edkeenan.com. Also, if you go to natureconnectionmagazine.com, you'll see Ed is in our expert department as well as an expert.
Yeah, that's the big blend, isn't it?
Yes, it's all part of the big blend, Ed.
All part of the big blend. Well, here's the thing. Whether they... No matter what they think, I would like to have their input if they desire to do so. Go on there and say, hey, I was inspired, I didn't like it, but you really caught my attention when you told me about that snake, that rattlesnake or whatever it was. Anyway, that would be nice to hear a comment from a few people.
Right, and everyone, the book has just come out. It's great. Go on Amazon.com, get the book, and review it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, so you can post your reviews, too. And I think that's a great thing, is having that communication between the author and the reader. It's just a personal thing. And, that's the joy of technology. We can do that, see? You can be anywhere in the world and do that. Ed, have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and we'll see you when we get to San Diego.
Thank you, dear. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
All right. Always a pleasure. And we'll have another time, I know.
Okay. Bye for now. Ed. Bye, Nancy.
Bye.
Bye.